Yeah. Yeah. In retrospect, looking back on it, what would you say gave you the most pause at the time? You know, when you fired off those emails and said, "Hey, we're gonna get this thing and we're gonna start a company." Was there a particular spot that you were like, "Yeah, that's maybe my weak spot, maybe my blind spot"? Like, was there anything that gave you pause about making that move?
Actually, absolutely not,
Hmm.
Matt, because it seemed like all of the messages, all of the signs were going in the right direction. And when I started to reach out to friends and family, hey, I'm going to start this company. Um, they were willing to stand up and fund the company. Um, there were some tight times. It's been written that my daughter's college funds were put into this company. They were my my retirement was put into this company, and obviously, my wife and I had conversations about that. But we strongly believe that doing good often will always lead to doing well. And so I think I've never, Matt, I've never taken a job for the money, and
Hmm.
I hope I never do. But it's getting things done that need to be done. I truly buy into the whole J&J credo, and that it's patients first, right? And it's caregivers second, and it's community third, and it's the shareholders fourth. And if the first three are taken care of, then the fourth will be taken care of. And you talk about beginning of career, back in the career, having started with J&J, we just recently moved into the Johnson and Johnson J Labs
Hmm.
because of the opportunity to be in that incubator. And um, it turns out they don't let you into J Labs with unless they are interested in your technology.
I can imagine.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
our ADC technology, as someone said, big pharma, big bio is only interested if you have wickedly crazy new science, which I don't think that's crazy. We're just wrapping the payloads and connecting them to the ADC with silicon dioxide, um, or if it gets them out of a bind. And as you know, with ADCs, the weak link are the linkers.
Hmm.
And so if we can help big pharma with the linkers, we've got to get through some toxicology trials. But once we get through that, I think we'll be a huge out licensing opportunity machine for the company. But also we're wrapping the payloads, and think of cytotoxins or even monoclonal antibodies or mRNA, being able to protect that payload until it gets into the cancer environment or into whatever disease state environment we're targeting, and then that coating being eaten off by the low pH, high acidity, will really make the ADCs a much more successful and large part of the pharma community. I think AbbVie came out during ASCO this year that they believe that ADCs will replace all chemotherapy and cancer, and certainly our delivery system by keeping the chemotherapy, the cytotoxins inactive until they get into the cancer environment will be a part of that.
Yeah. Before you began developing the ADC program, I mean, before you even expanded the original product beyond osteosarcoma, you had mentioned that, yeah, you knew why Big Bio wasn't necessarily interested in it because it was a small patient population. How did you like when you were getting the company off the ground and it was like, we're going to go tackle osteosarcoma with this product? How did you reconcile that risk, that product sort of patient population calculation?
Well, I think it was twofold, really. One, we saw that um, ROST HER2 was preventing metastasis in osteosarcoma, and um, in the dogs. And as we talked about earlier, the dogs get osteosarcoma, 30 to 40,000 dogs a year in the United States,
Hmm.
as opposed to only 1,000 kids a year, 20,000 kids globally. So we saw that it was preventing metastasis. And even though it's only half the patients that metastasize, you really don't know which patient's going to metastasize. So we didn't see the entire market in the US as 500. We saw it as 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw the global market not as 10,000 patients, but 20,000 patients. And we've done this, we've done everything with our phase 2B trial, with in licensing both technologies, with advancing both technology. We've done all this, even post IPO with $25 million. Most companies would have spent 120, 150, 250, 250 million. And so we've been very cost effective. And we see just with the osteosarcoma indication, potential market of $400 to $500 million a year in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And then we fully intend to commercialize the osteosarcoma indication ourselves in the United States, but we are looking for a global partner to reach the other 19,000 patients a year. But we also see that pivoting to other solid tumors like breast cancer. To be fair, Matt, when we first started the company, the only indication we had was osteosarcoma, so we had to make it work.
Yeah.
We've since expanded it to all the other indications, any other solid tumor that HER2 expresses, and it turns out most solid tumors express HER2 when they're metastasizing because the cancer is using that HER2 to set up vascularization in the lungs and the brain. So what we're going to do is quickly pivot to a phase 3, either bundle or breast cancer trial. And that's obviously a huge unmet market, unmet medical need. There are still at least 40,000 people a year dying of breast cancer. We see colorectal cancer as an opportunity. But to your point, when we started, we were a one-hit wonder. And if it hadn't worked, if it looks like clinical trials working pretty well and the side effects are very minimal, but if it hadn't worked, we would have been out of luck. And so that's why we added the ADC technology. Yeah. And then we had the opportunity to add the canine indication, which has been provisionally approved by the USDA. And then we added all the other indications. And so it was about de-risking. It was about more shots on goal. But when we first started, I don't know how to answer your question. How did I know that we could make it on osteosarcoma? I don't know why I was so confident that we could, but I am now very confident that if we only had osteosarcoma, we'd be okay. But now that we have all the other indications, we could have a real impact on other solid tumors.
Yeah. You mentioned a couple minutes ago, you referenced your cash conservancy. Open up the curtain a little bit there. Give us some insight into how you've done so much with so little, where most companies would have spent a lot more money. What are sort of some of the central tenets of preserving your cash runway?
Well, one of my favorite investors said, "Paul, you can stretch a dollar like nobody I've ever seen." So, one, we've done a lot with vendors, and two, we've had a lot of our vendors contribute in kind. I think the first couple quotes I got for a 20 patient phase 2 trial were in the $20 million range. Mm-hmm. Ended up, we did a 41 patient phase 2 trial for under $6 million. And when I got that bid for the 20 million for 20 patients, I said, well, why don't we just have a central location and fly all the families and their the kids in to a central location on private jet? It would be cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just didn't make sense to me. And so obviously we didn't go with that proposal, but we did end up partnering with the CRO that's doing our trial, George Clinical, and Children's Oncology Group that's also helping us run the trial has been a huge supporter. We have 7 nonprofits that have invested into the company because they believe in our mission. And even if our clinical trial had failed, which clearly seems like it is not, they would have advanced science in osteosarcoma. But now that we seem to be having a trial that's making positive effects for patients, at least from around event-free survival and overall survival, if we can commercialize this and these nonprofits benefit financially, like the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation did with Vertex, where CFF sold their royalty stream for either 4.3 or 5.3 billion, can't remember which. But if these nonprofits that invested have some sort of return to them, they can not only be proud to say that they supported a company that brought a new treatment in osteosarcoma for the first time in 40 years, because they're still using doxorubicin, methotrexate, and cisplatin like they have for the last 40 years. And it's really toxic, and it's for 9 months, and it's really brutal on the kids. But, they can say, one, we've been involved and helped bring a new treatment, but then they can take the finances and work towards not only treatment, but cures and someday prevention. So, that's what nonprofits, that's what disease state organizations are meant to do. And if we can help them do that, the better.
Yeah.
The more, the better.
What's the community involvement look like today? I mean, this started like as grassroots as I can probably imagine, right? Like, you and Olivia's dad saying, "Hey, let's put some work into this." Built a community, like you said. I mean, I saw the pictures online too, the head shaving ceremonies and that kind of stuff. Now you're what, 6, 7 years in?
Yeah, and the community has been phenomenal from the beginning. As I said, I emailed those 8 doctors, and they all emailed me the next morning. 2 of them emailed saying, "Hey, we can't be on your scientific advisory board because we're conflicted, but we'll do anything we can for you."
Mm-hmm.
And that was Richard Gerlach from MD Anderson, who always responds to emails. He's just hugely supportive. And Dr. Katie Janeway of Harvard and Boston Children's, who goes out of her way to help us. I mean, she was moving into a new house in Boston in July without air conditioning and took an investor call. So, I mean, yeah, just that commitment. The physicians, the parents. We have a patient advocacy advisory board that will go to the FDA with us. They include the father of Tyler Trent, Tony Trent. Tyler was the young man from ESPN who was the honorary coach for Purdue when they beat #1 ranked Ohio State. Apologize to some of the folks on here that may be the Ohio State fans, but
no, I'm happy to revisit that story. My son's a sophomore at Penn State, so anytime Ohio State loses, we're happy to talk about it.
So, I mean, Scott Van Pelt and a lot of the folks at ESPN really took Tyler under their wing, and it was just some emotional times for the disease. Laura Sobiak, the Children's Cancer Research Fund, is involved on the advisory board. Olivia's on that. A young lady who finished our clinical trial, which means she did not metastasize in the 48 weeks she is receiving our therapy. She's on our patient advisory board. Mr. Mac Titchener, one of our bigger investors, who is a very large venture capital in the biotech industry. I think he was the largest shareholder of Peloton when they sold to Merck. Mm-hmm. He got into biotech venture capital because his son, Willie, passed away of osteosarcoma over 20 years ago. So, we're all trying to use a really horrible disease and make it better and hopefully make some other cancers better.